Freddy Krueger isn't just the star of A Nightmare on Elm Street, he's one of the most iconic slasher villains of all time. When Wes Craven first created Freddy Krueger, many things from the real world and his own life brought together the nightmare to life. The name of this evil dream demon arose from the experiences Wes Craven had as a child. Initially influenced by the 1922 silent film, Nosferatu, and a disfigured homeless man he once saw. The name Freddy Krueger is far more innocent and personal than one would assume. When Craven was 11 years old, he was constantly bullied and abused by one of his classmates, Fred Krueger. This childhood event stuck around long enough, though it was subtly changed to Freddy. An interesting fact behind Freddy's perfect combination of a fedora, gloved hand, and striped sweater isn't simply a creative choice, but rather a cool factoid on Wes Craven's part. This is because the color scheme is based off an article from Scientific American, which said that the colors red and green are the most abrasive clashing colors to the human retina, making them hard to perceive. Further, A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by a medical condition suffered by Asian men in the late 1970s and early 1980s, particularly among Hmong refugees in America who escaped the Cambodian genocide. In an interview with Vulture, Wes Craven revealed that A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by an article in the LA Times. The story follows a family who escaped the killing fields in Cambodia and managed to get to the United States. Quote, "Things were fine, and then suddenly the young son was having very disturbing nightmares. He told his parents he was afraid that if he slept, the thing chasing him would get him, so he tried to stay awake for days at a time. When he finally fell asleep, his parents thought this crisis was over. Then they heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. He died in the middle of a nightmare. Here was a youngster having a vision of a horror that everyone older was denying. That became the central line of Nightmare on Elm Street." End quote. The story of the young child wasn't an isolated incident. Dozens of Southeast Asian refugees in America died for unknown reasons in their sleep during the 1980s. They suffered from such vivid night terrors that some refused to sleep. Those who eventually fell asleep died, despite their good health. The Filipino people referred to these sudden deaths as nightmare syndrome. Some Hmong people believed they were being punished by their ancestors for abandoning their homeland for America. Was it the sudden shock of an urban area that caused this nightmare cardiac arrest? Whatever the cause, this mysterious illness laid the foundation for Freddy's abilities. Freddy Krueger had a long reach within the shadows of the dream world. Craven felt the most basic human element was the hand. He decided that Freddy would tap into primal fears of being brutally eviscerated by a bear-like claw and made the bladed weapon by having Krueger wear the infamous glove. Robert Englund, Freddy's actor, found the glove too heavy to swing around or pose with, leading to the iconic pose of Freddy just standing with his gloved hand hanging lower than his free one. As for Freddy's hat, it was also pulled from Craven's own past. Craven recounts the hat was worn by men when he was a kid, and there was a particular man who scared him when he was little. It was a drunk that came down the sidewalk and woke him while sleeping. He went back and hid for what felt for hours. When he finally crept back to the window, he was still there. The man started walking half backwards so that he could keep looking at him, and that's when he realized, the idea of an adult who was frightening and enjoyed terrifying a child was the origin of Freddy. Any franchise that gets insanely popular has a high chance of putting their trademark on other forms of media. In the late 1980s, Freddy appeared during the Six Flags Fright Fest, where he had his own haunted house called Freddy's Nightmare, the Haunted House on Elm Street, for 2 years. Later on, he appeared with fellow killer Jason during Universal Studios' Halloween Horror Nights. There's nothing unusual about having a bad dream, but a dream so horrific it literally kills. Hit the subscribe button to stay awake, for fear you might be visited by the man behind the nightmares. Check out the true story behind the Amityville Horror. Thanks for watching.